The dark secret 99% of people will never discover that could change your life today. If you keep being predictable, you've already lost the game of life. Today I'm revealing the most dangerous psychological secret I learned studying magicians, dictators, and masters of manipulation. This might sound controversial, but by minute 3 of this video, you'll never be the same person again. Warning: if you're one of those people who prefers living in their comfort zone, close this video now. The secret technique that makes people obey you without question. There's a lost city buried in the annals of history where an ordinary man became the most feared and respected being in the entire region. He had no armies, no gold, no noble titles, but he had something that made emperors tremble in his presence: the power of absolute uncertainty. This man was known only as the magician, and his technique was so devastatingly effective that it was banned from history books. Why? Because it revealed a truth that the powerful never wanted you to know. Real power isn't in what you show, but in what you hide. Law 17 of power: one of the most dangerous and least understood states. Cultivate an air of unpredictability. But here's what nobody tells you. This isn't just a strategy, it's a psychological weapon of mass destruction. When you become predictable, you become an open book. And an open book loses all its mystery, all its power of fascination. Think about your bosses, your rivals, the people who seem to have control over you. They're predictable. You know exactly how they'll react to every situation. And that's why you can manipulate. Now imagine being the opposite of that. The magician in our story understood something most people take a lifetime to discover. People fear what they can't control or predict. And where there's fear, there's respect. Where there's respect, there's power. He never answered questions directly. When someone asked, "Can you really make gold?" he would smile and say, "The question isn't whether I can, but whether you're prepared to pay the price of knowing." When questioned about his origins, he'd respond, "I came from where everyone comes from, but few remember." This uncertainty wasn't casual, it was strategic, calculated, devastating. People would spend entire nights trying to figure him out. Merchants offered fortunes just for a consultation. Nobles abandoned parties to follow him through the streets. He had become the city's collective obsession, and obsession is just another name for mind control. Here's your first radical transformation. For the next 3 days, you're going to implement the shadow response technique. When someone asks you a personal question, instead of answering directly, you're going to create mystery. Instead of, "I work in marketing," say, "I help people discover things they didn't know they needed." Instead of, "I'm fine," say, "I'm exactly where I need to be." Instead of explaining your plans, say, "You'll see soon enough." Attention. This might feel weird at first, but watch how people start seeing you differently. How they become more curious. How they start paying you more attention. How you, subtly, gain power over interactions. But be careful. With great power comes great responsibility. Use this technique wisely, because once you experience the power of controlling the narrative of your interactions, there's no going back. You'll never be invisible again. The science behind this is brutal. Uncertainty creates what psychologists call cognitive load. When people can't predict you, their brains go into overdrive trying to figure you out. This mental effort translates into increased attention, respect, and ultimately, influence over their decisions. Think about the most charismatic people you know. Steve Jobs, Elon Musk. They never give straight answers. They speak in riddles, in possibilities, in visions that others can't quite grasp. That's not coincidence, that's weaponized uncertainty. But this is just the first layer of power. I'm going to reveal how to use surprise as a devastating psychological weapon. Keep watching if you really want to master this game. How to break anyone's mind in 30 seconds. If you want me to stop revealing these dark secrets, it's too late. You've already gone too far. The magician had a macabre ritual. Every morning, he would walk through the city's central square and choose a random person, could be a merchant, a child, even a king's guard. He would approach this person and whisper something in their ear, just one sentence. Then he'd walk away, smiling. You know what the effect was? That person would become obsessed for the rest of the day trying to understand what it meant. Some would even abandon their duties and follow the magician, begging for explanations. He had discovered something that modern neuroscience confirms. The human brain cannot handle incomplete information. This is the power of strategic surprise. It's not just doing something unexpected, it is breaking your opponent's mental patterns so brutally that they completely lose emotional control of the situation. Think about all the times you were caught off guard. Remember how your mind simply shut down for a few seconds. How you didn't know how to react. That moment of mental paralysis is where true power lives. The chess master doesn't win because he knows more moves, he wins because he makes moves his opponent could never predict. When you're predictable, you're playing your adversary's game. When you're unpredictable, you force your adversary to play your game. But here's the darkest secret. Surprise doesn't need to be grandiose to be devastating. Sometimes, silence at the wrong moment is more powerful than 1,000 words. Sometimes, a smile when everyone expects anger can completely break the opponent's strategy. The magician understood that people operate with mental scripts. When someone yells, we expect to yell back. When someone attacks, we expect to defend ourselves. But what if you do exactly the opposite of what they expect? There's a secret technique he used, which I call the opposite method. When everyone in the meeting was tense and serious, he would laugh. When everyone was happy and relaxed, he would assume a solemn posture. When they expected him to speak, he would remain silent. When they expected silence, he would make profound statements. Result? He completely controlled the energy and mood of any environment. People didn't know how to react to him, so they simply obeyed. American psychology research shows that when someone breaks expected behavioral patterns, it triggers what's called the cognitive dissonance effect. The brain literally doesn't know how to process the information, creating a temporary state of mental vulnerability that can be leveraged for influence. Your second radical transformation. I meant the broken rhythm technique. Over the next few days, in an important conversation, do something completely unexpected. In the middle of a serious discussion, ask an apparently disconnected question. By the way, have you ever noticed how silence has a sound? After someone's long monologue, respond with just, fascinating, and don't elaborate. When everyone is speaking fast and anxiously, speak slowly and quietly, force them to adjust to your rhythm. Serious warning. This technique is so powerful it can become addictive. Once you feel the rush of controlling the emotional flow of an interaction, you'll want to use it all the time. But use it responsibly. Remember, you're dealing with human minds. The key is timing. In American business culture, unexpected pauses during negotiations can be worth millions. A well-timed question that seems off topic can completely derail an opponent's prepared argument. Surprise is the ultimate equalizer. It doesn't matter if you are the smallest person in the room if you can control when and how the conversation flows. Now, you know the power of surprise. But there's something even darker. The technique coming next is used by manipulation masters to control entire crowds. Don't stop now. The killer method to control entire crowds. This is the most dangerous part of the video. If you're not prepared to see the world as it really is, stop here. The magician's final technique was the most devastating of all. He didn't just manipulate individuals, he manipulated entire crowds. And the secret? He treated every social interaction as a grand theater where he was simultaneously the director, the protagonist, and the only one who knew the complete script. Here's the brutal truth nobody wants to admit. Every human interaction is, at its core, a performance. You perform the role of son, employee, friend, leader. The difference is that most people are bad actors playing characters they didn't choose. The magician was a brilliant actor who created his own character. The psychology behind this is frighteningly simple. People don't respond to reality. They respond to the perception of reality. And whoever controls perception, controls everything. The magician discovered something it took humanity millennia to understand scientifically. Emotions are contagious. When one person feels something intensely, everyone around starts feeling the same thing. He used this like a conductor uses an orchestra. Wanted to create tension? He would lower his voice and pause at the right moments. forcing everyone to lean in to listen. Wanted to create euphoria? He would smile in a specific way that made everyone smile back without knowing why. Wanted to create mystery? He would look at an empty point in the air as if he saw something no one else could see. But here's the truly dark part. He did all this consciously, calculatedly, deliberately. While everyone was trapped in their own emotions, he remained completely detached, observing the effect of his actions like a scientist observing a chemical reaction. There's a term in psychology for this: Machiavellian emotional intelligence. It's the ability to read, understand, and manipulate others' emotions while remaining emotionally immune to the effects. The most devastating technique he used I call the inverse emotional mirror. It works like this: when everyone is anxious, you remain calm. When everyone is calm, you inject a small dose of urgency. When everyone is sad, you maintain mysterious energy. When everyone is happy, you add depth. Why does this work? Because you become the group's emotional reference point. People unconsciously start adjusting to your energy, not the other way around. This taps into what American social psychologists call emotional contagion theory. Mirror neurons in our brains automatically mimic the emotional states we observe. But when you consciously control your emotional output while remaining immune to others' emotional input, you become what researchers term an emotional influencer, someone who shapes group mood rather than being shaped by it. Your final transformation: implement the invisible director protocol. In your next important social situation, before entering the environment, consciously decide what emotion you want the group to feel during the interaction. Constantly monitor the collective mood, adjust your energy to subtly guide the group in the desired direction. Observe how people unconsciously respond to your emotional leadership. Final warning: this technique is so powerful it can permanently change how you see human interactions. Once you realize you can direct the movie of your social interactions, you'll never be just a supporting actor in your own life again. Silicon Valley executives pay thousands to learn these influence techniques. Wall Street traders use emotional manipulation to close million-dollar deals. Political operatives employ these methods to sway public opinion. The difference is now you have access to this knowledge. The magician eventually disappeared from the city, but his legend remained. They say he didn't leave, he simply became invisible, continuing to influence events from behind the scenes. Maybe he's doing it to this day. You've learned a lot already, but there's one final secret, the most dangerous of all. I'll show you how to become completely invisible to power. Stay until the end if you want the complete transformation. And if you want more secrets like these, subscribe, but only if you're prepared to never see the world the same way again. How to become invisible and control everything from the shadows. This is the part they don't want you to know. The final secret that separates masters from slaves. After the magician completely dominated the city, something extraordinary happened. He simply disappeared. Not physically, he continued walking the streets, frequenting the same places, talking to the same people, but somehow, he had become invisible to power. The king's guards didn't see him as a threat. Rich merchants didn't consider him competition. Nobles didn't view him as a rival. He had discovered the most advanced technique of all: how to exercise maximum power while staying completely off the radar. This is the powerful ghost technique, the art of influencing everything without being perceived as an influencer. It's the final stage of mastery over human power, and it's also the most dangerous of all. The psychology behind this is terrifyingly sophisticated. When people see you as a direct source of power, they automatically create mental defenses against you. But when you become a ghost, someone who is present, but not perceived as a threat, their defenses completely dissolve. The magician had learned that absolute power requires absolute invisibility. He continued using all the previous techniques: uncertainty, surprise, emotional manipulation, but now applied them so subtly that people believed the ideas came from themselves. Imagine having the ability to plant thoughts in people's minds so naturally that they would swear they had that brilliant idea themselves. Imagine getting your bosses, colleagues, even your rivals, to implement exactly what you want, thinking it was their initiative. That's the difference between amateur power and professional power. The amateur wants everyone to know he has power. The professional wants nobody to suspect where the power really comes from. The amateur controls through force. The professional controls through invisible suggestion. The technique the magician used I call psychological seeding. It works like this. In a conversation, you plant an idea as if it were just a casual observation. Days later, when the person has that idea and implements it, you never remind them that you suggested it first. For example, instead of saying, "You should fire John," you casually say, "It's interesting how some people drain the energy of an entire team, right?" A week later, your boss decides he needs to make changes to the team. This taps into what behavioral psychologists call cryptomnesia, the phenomenon where people forget the source of an idea and believe they generated it themselves. It is the same principle used by top-tier consultants who charge millions. They don't tell clients what to do. They guide clients to discover the solutions themselves. Your supreme transformation. Implement the invisible influencer protocol. For the next 7 days, identify a change you want to see happen in your environment. Plant the seed of that idea in casual conversations. Always as neutral observations disappear. Never mention again that you brought up the subject. Observe how the idea appears naturally in people's minds. Celebrate silently when they see your suggestion as if it were their initiative. Extreme warning. This technique is so powerful it can transform you into an invisible force of change in any environment. But use it with extreme responsibility. You will be dealing with the deepest level of the human psyche. The true master of power doesn't need anyone to know he's the master. He's satisfied watching his plans unfold perfectly while remaining in the shadows, like an invisible director orchestrating a symphony of influence. Silicon Valley's most successful entrepreneurs use this exact technique. They don't pitch ideas directly, they create conditions where investors discover the opportunity themselves. Wall Street's top traders don't give advice, they share observations that lead others to make the trades they want them to make. The magician never revealed where he learned these techniques. Some say he discovered them alone. Others believe he was taught by a secret order of influence masters. What we know is that he lived the rest of his life as a powerful ghost present everywhere, influencing everything, but never being perceived as the real source of power. This was your complete education in the art of invisible power. Use it wisely. The world needs more secret maestros. You made it this far because you're different from the majority. You have the courage to see the truth. But knowledge without action is just entertainment. Use these techniques wisely. And remember, with great power comes great responsibility. Until the next revelation, if you're ready for it.